Hi guys, welcome to this wrap up of my 20 favorite books from the last trimester of the year. At the beginning of the year or a few months ago, I realized I really like to live my life in trimesters. I feel like the first 4 months and then the second 4 months and then the last 4 months kind of all just go really well together. So I know a lot of people make these kind of lists, like quarterly lists, but I decided to go with 3 separate videos each year, and so therefore it's trimesters, which definitely makes me think of being pregnant and stuff, but it's okay. So these are my favorite books from the last 4 months of the year. So we're talking May, June, July, and August. And there are so many good ones. Last time I did this, for the first trimester, I ended up with a list of 20 books. And this time I was going through my list and I ended up with 21. I decided to take one out to make it an even 20. So I'm going to not talk very long about each book because there's quite a few. I've done wrap-ups of all of these books. I think there might be, yeah, I'm pretty sure I did because, yeah, right. Okay, my brain is not really firing on all cylinders here. Yeah, I have one I already know it's going to be on the next list, but it didn't meet the cutoff, so that'll be next time. Yeah, so I am gonna go in a particular order. I'm gonna go in the order that I read them, with the exception that one of them is, there's 2 books from one series that made this list. And so that's kind of cool. So I'll do those 2 together. Otherwise, we will go in the order that I read them. So we've got everything from like historical fiction to fantasy to manga to middle grade to nonfiction, mystery, a little bit of everything. So we'll just go in order here. So like this time I already know I have a book that's going to make the list for the next round, and right after I filmed my last video of my favorites, I knew a book that was going to make it on because I read it right at the beginning of May, or I finished it right at the beginning of May, and that is Lady Jayne Disappears by Joanna Davidson Politano. And I did rave about this book quite a bit. It's one of the ones that I've tabbed so much, and I do keep meaning to do a video sharing how I tab and annotate and highlight my books. That will probably be coming. If it doesn't come before December, it will come in December because I am fully planning on doing Vlogmas / Bookmas again. Anyway, so this is historical fiction set during Victorian London times. Our main character, she actually grows up in a debtor's prison because her father was thrown in when she was a baby, so she spent her entire time with him. It made me research debtor's prisons so much. Right at the beginning of the book, her father has died, and so she is released from this debtor's prison. It's so interesting because she could actually go back and forth because she wasn't the one in prison. Prison then was so different, but she came back every night because that's where she lived. But she is released. I think it was her aunt or her great aunt sent someone to pick up her father's things, and she never realized that she was one of the things that was getting picked up. And so our main character, Orly, is trying to figure out the story of her mother. Her father was a writer. There was a lot of mystery on who her mother was, and so that is Lady Jayne. There's so many great quotes. I loved the faith elements in this book. I love how they were displayed. I've already been talking too much considering I have 20 books to get to, so I really loved this one. Next up is going to be A Peculiar Combination, and this is where the sequel comes in. The second book, The Key to Deceit, I rated them both 5 stars. I loved them. These are historical fiction mysteries, and I realized that is a subgenre that I really like, or a like merging of genres that I really like. So this is set in the middle of World War II. Our main character, her and her uncle are, well, like they're locksmiths by trade, but things are a little tight, / it doesn't really even matter if it's tight because I think they've always done this, but they're also thieves. They break into people's safes and steal things. And right in the beginning of the first book, they get caught, and they are told that they could help with the war efforts and not go to prison, or they could go to prison, and obviously they choose to help with the war efforts. And I don't know, I've enjoyed our main character. I've enjoyed the like different things that she has to do to try to help with the war efforts, and using her safe cracking locksmith skills So definitely recommend this if you like historical fiction and or mystery. It was a really great merging of both, and I really want to own book 2 eventually, and I can't wait for more books in this series. Okay, the next one is a nonfiction book, and it's so short, it's probably considered like an essay, or maybe even I don't know if it was originally a sermon, but it is The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness by Timothy Keller. Tiny little book with like so much impact. I really enjoyed it. It's one of those ones that I would like to buy. It's really about not thinking so much about yourself and living the life that God has called you to. I don't really want to say too much because it was like 40 pages, but the book was teeny tiny, so yeah, you kind of have to read it for yourself, or else if I talk too long about it, I will have explained the entire book. The next nonfiction book that I finished was the Bible Recap. So I started reading this in November. It is a 1-year chronological read through of the Bible, but I decided to do it in 6 months. So I finished it in May, and then I kind of started again, not exactly from the beginning. I jumped in where we were in the year, and I'm currently reading it through again. So it's a 1-year chronological read through the Bible. So you read the passage it says, and then each day it has like a 2-page kind of like summary of what you read. And this has been so good. First of all, this was my first time reading the Bible chronologically. So some days it's like, oh, I just like, you read the story one day in like Kings, and then you read it in like Chronicles the next day, and sometimes it can feel a little repetitive, but in some ways it's really nice to have that double exposure to a story so close together. And then I just loved the way that she summarizes everything. I felt like it has really helped me understand some more from the Bible that I kind of missed previously, especially some of the sections that can be a little bit harder to read through. Maybe I'm just not understanding as much. This has been a real big game changer to me. I have really enjoyed this. Highly recommend it. It is a really good resource. Okay, next up we've got a middle grade historical fiction, and that is The Length of a String. This one is one that I've just heard really good things about and really enjoyed it myself as well. So our main character, her great-grandmother or grandmother has just passed away, and our main character is adopted, and her grandmother had come over from Europe during World War II and left a diary, and she's reading through her grandma's diary, learning about her life and about her life as a Jew who had been kind of like, I guess, escaped. Lithuania, I think, was the country. I keep forgetting. It was a small country in Europe somewhere, and I like literally teared up while reading this story, which I do sometimes, but it doesn't happen very often with middle grade, so then I feel like you know it's a really good book. Next up is an Agatha Christie. I've been reading at least one a month, and Why Didn't They Ask Evans was my favorite from the last few months. This one it doesn't actually follow a detective, so I have really enjoyed the Tommy and Tuppence books as well, but they're more like, I love them for the detectives, not so much for the mystery, and this one was such a fun mystery. So this one, our main character, his name is Bobby Jones, comes across a dying man. The man dies while he's with him, and the last breath of the guy was, he says, why didn't they ask Evans? And you know, this mystery starts. I don't want to say too much. I do have a full video with this one, I think. This possibly was my last one that I did a trying to solve, and then I just kind of got a little bit tired trying to do a video each month trying to solve her books, but I still love them, and this one was a lot of fun. There was a lot of twists, and I felt like I understood or knew parts of things that were coming, but putting it together, like, she does such a great job with that. Then we've got a historical fiction book. It's called The Girl in His Shadow, and now I can't remember exactly when this one was set, but our main character is a girl who, she starts out, she kind of gets adopted by this doctor. I think it was during the cholera epidemic. I don't remember exactly. Her parents died. He took her under his wing, kind of, and she ends up becoming a kind of like a doctor, but not officially, because back then women weren't allowed to be, and it's very heavy on the medical side of things, which would often scare me away, but I actually really enjoyed it. It was a really good look at the history of women in medicine and medicine in general. I also read the next book right after, or I started by reading the second book and then realized they're not technically part of a series, but it's way better if you actually read them in order or read The Girl in His Shadow first. And I loved The Girl in His Shadow. It was fascinating to see how women were treated, how doctors were treated, just the whole like medical field back in whatever year it was. Definitely, if you like historical fiction at all, especially if you are kind of tired of like the World War II historical fiction, that was fascinating. Now on to some fantasy, and would this list be complete without a Sanderson? I don't think so. So Elantris was my favorite Sanderson that I read in the last few months. I am trying to like work my way through all his books, and I think I've pretty much read about one a month each month this year, and I still am not even caught up to all his books. So I feel like this one is so hard to understand. I went into it not knowing anything because I'd heard about it and I didn't even understand the explanations. So Elantris was a city with these people who were like, it's called the City of Gods. They had these powers. They could heal, they could do things. But then 10 years before the book, something happened and those people lost their powers and became kind of like shells of who they were. And then we pick up with some weird things happening in the world, and I really can't say much because it's so hard to explain. But if you like fantasy at all, I would highly recommend giving this a try. I also really liked his Warbreaker, which is also currently a standalone, but with Sanderson everything is open to more books in the future. And this one is so very different, even though they both take place in the same world. But definitely recommend checking this out if you like fantasy at all. Okay, then after rating a first book in a series like 2 stars, I decided to go on with book 2, because I knew kind of like the trajectory of where it was going, and I thought it would be good, and I ended up giving book 2 5 stars. So that is A Silent Voice. This one is a manga about, the first book is all about a bully and how terrible he is to this girl who is deaf that comes to his school. He was so terrible. And you know, you're not really supposed to like him, and the first book sets up for the other ones, but it was to the point where he was so annoying, and I couldn't motivate myself to get to book 2, but so many people really enjoyed the rest of the series or other books in the series, so I thought I would give it a try, and book 2 was amazing. I did continue on, and the other ones are like not as great. I don't know if I would really recommend the series because you have to read book 1 in order to get to book 2, and book 1 I just wanted to punch this guy, so yeah. But there was a lot of like redemption and learning and growth in book 2 that made it really good. Okay, also I love to add some L.M. Montgomery to the list, and this one is Rainbow Valley. So this is the second last book in the Anne series. I still haven't read the last book. I've had it sitting there waiting for me for a few months, and I think I'm dragging my feet because it's the last book. I don't want this to end. So I've heard that the series kind of goes downhill a bit as it goes on, and I can understand why people think this. In this book, Anne and Gilbert have been married for 15 years, so they have their kids and stuff. And so Anne is not the same person. She's honestly barely even in this book. That is sad. But our main characters in here are these 4 kids that have newly moved to the village. Their father is, what's the terminology? He's a minister and widowed, and they are a lot like Anne when she was little. So this felt a bit more like the beginning books, and Anne is while she's such a minor part of the book, she is such a sweet part of the book, and I love that. And yeah, definitely going to continue the series. I have more L.M. Montgomery books to read, so I shouldn't really be dragging my feet, but I just love her writing, and I kind of never want it to end. So if I don't start it, then I don't have to finish it, and then it never ends. That's my weird brain philosophy right now. A lot of these I've raved about in reading wrap-ups. This is one. I think I raved about it for like an entire month after in various videos, and that is All Manner of Things. This is a historical fiction set during the Vietnam War and single perspective, which is so rare in historical fiction books. I loved it. So we follow our main character, Annie, whose brother is going off to, her brother Mike enlists, he's as a medic. And oh, it's so hard. There's like letters back and forth between her and her brother Mike. Meanwhile, also her father is back in the picture. He kind of disappeared from their life when she was a child because he was dealing with a lot of, I guess, PTSD from the Korean War. And oh, I don't know, this book just hits on so many topics. I find historical fiction like slow, takes me a while to get into. I just devoured this book. I couldn't pick it up enough. Definitely recommend it. Loved it. Okay, now jumping back to middle grade, also historical fiction. This one is set in World War II, and that is A Place to Hang the Moon. This is a book I need to buy like ASAP because I need my daughter to read it, and it was amazing. So think of like The War That Saved My Life is a middle grade historical fiction that has gotten a lot of hype over the last few years. Think of that crossed with Narnia. It's like, it's so good. So we follow 3 siblings who end up leaving London during the bombings, or right before the bombings in World War II. And their grandmother just died. She was the one that was caring for them. So they're going to live with a family in hopes of finding a forever family, but they're not telling the people that they stay with that they're actually rich and they're looking for a family. They don't want that to persuade people. And they have some hard placements, I guess, as like a foster parent, adoptive parent. There were so many things that really hit me in this book. Also, our main characters all really like reading, so there's like some fun bookish quotes and like talking about love for books and libraries, and yeah, it's one worth owning for sure. Staying in London during World War II, we've got The Last Bookshop in London. This is a book I heard a lot of high praise about and was a little bit worried it wasn't going to be as good as people were talking about, but I really enjoyed it. So our main character, actually, she starts out by working at a bookshop, and at first I thought I was not going to like this book or her because she previously never had time to read. Like, she's not a bookish person. Normally when you have a bookshop book, they're like, you know, really into reading and into books and love the characters and all the things, and she didn't. And I was like, oof, red flag. Like, I'm not gonna like this if she doesn't like books. But she learns to fall in love with reading and figuring out life during the hardest times in London. And I also flew through this one, really loved it. Currently reading her newest book, so no spoilers because I don't really know my thoughts yet, but I was very excited to pick up another book by her. Okay, science fiction time, guys. I personally loved Project Hail Mary. I feel like this, you either love it or you don't. Like, people are very strong on both sides, I feel like. So this is Andy Weir's newest, I think it came out last year, science fiction book. And I loved it so much. So our main character wakes up in a spaceship, and because he was put to sleep for a few years, he doesn't remember a lot of stuff. Like, he doesn't remember his name, he doesn't remember why he's there. So a lot of stuff is revealed to him as he goes. And because he wakes up not knowing much, it's so fun to learn with him what's happening that I feel like I don't want to say very much. If you liked or tried The Martian by Andy Weir, it definitely, I feel like it has similar vibes. His writing style is similar. There's like funny parts. Our main character like doesn't swear pretty much at all, so that is different than The Martian, where it was a lot. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then like there's like a twist that he has in it that I don't want to say, but I really like what he did because I realized that's something that I really like in my science fiction books. So yeah, another book that I can't say much about, but I suggest you read it, especially if you like science fiction. I had so much fun with it. I kept telling my husband, like, reading different lines or different things, or laughing out loud and being like, sorry, I can't even explain this to you because it wouldn't make any sense. But I forced him to read it like right after I was done because I enjoyed it so much. Okay, then another middle grade foster care book that I read is One for the Murphys. And granted, I read this, I think, the week that we got another foster care placement here. So I was in a, emotional place already as it was. But this one really hit me. So we follow a 12-year-old girl who is in this new foster home. And, just seeing her hard edge. And I read a number of foster care books, and I actually really liked the foster mom in this book because she wasn't the way that they typically portray foster moms. She was a bit tough on the girl, which is good. I think she needed it, but she was also very sweet, and they talk about how she's the perfect mom, baking the things, and yeah, it was really good when I read it really fast. My only complaint was that I'm pretty sure it was in that one, they used the Lord's name in vain a few times, and that really bothers me in middle grade books, as I will talk about again in a minute. Let's just continue on with middle grade. Amari and the Night Brothers. So this one is middle grade fantasy, and you guys, it's like Harry Potter but different and better. I'm gonna say it's better. I think it's better. If you like Harry Potter at all, don't be offended by me saying it's better. I highly suggest you give it a try. So our main character is a girl named Amari. She gets a chance to go to this summer camp, which is actually like a magical summer camp where she is learning about this whole world that is unseen that she can see once she puts these eye drops in. And it has so many Harry Potter vibes, but it's not like a complete ripoff of Harry Potter. I had so much fun with it. I loved her roommate when she goes to summer camp. She was a lot of fun, and there were some great twists and turns. I just enjoyed the entire book, and I think book 2 is coming out soon, so I'm gonna jump on that as soon as I can. And then one that I forgot to grab from upstairs is actually book 2 in a series. It is Blood for Blood. So book 1 is Wolf by Wolf. It is an alternate history if the Axis powers won and Germany has all this land. So it takes place, there's a motorcycle race from Germany to Japan, and our main character spent a lot of time in a concentration camp and was experimented on, and as such she has been gifted or unintentionally got the power to shapeshift, and there are a lot of crazy things that go on, and I just had a blast. Book 1 I didn't like as much as book 2, which is very, very different. I really enjoyed book 1. I think I gave it 4 stars. But book 2 I gave 5 stars. I just really loved it, and I want to read all the books by that author, and I am so into alternate history right now, so give me a few recommendations if you have any. Okay, 2 more left. This is a long video, you guys. I'm trying to be quick with each of them. Next up, we've got The Nature of Small Birds. Oh man, this book is so hard to read because it has 3 perspectives in 3 different timelines, and they're all part of the same family. And the fact that I could follow that and still give a book 5 stars means it's amazing. So our main character is actually this girl. I think she's our main character. This girl named Mindy. She was adopted during the Vietnam War. But we follow 3 of her family members through the entire book. She's never actually someone that we follow. So we start by following Linda, who is her mom, and we follow her in 1975 as they're gearing up to / do adopt Mindy. We follow her sister, Sunny, in the 80s, 88 I want to say. So they're in high school, so you get to see their relationship. And then we follow the dad, whose name I'm totally blanking on, in 2013. This is gonna bother me. I want to say his name is Bruce. His name's Bruce. Yep. Okay. 2013, as Mindy is looking at finding her birth family. And once again, as an adoptive parent, there were multiple moments where I'm oh no, this is just, it's hitting close to home. When they get the referral for Mindy, they get the phone call. It's nothing like how our experience was, but it just brought me back, and I just felt all choked up, and there's just different parts where it just really hits home. But I hear that other people that have read this book that have not adopted get really choked up and really enjoy it too, so you don't have to have adopted to enjoy it, but it probably hits me a bit of a different way because of it. And I don't know, guys, I say it every time, So obsessed with this cover. I don't know, is it the watercolor? Is it the bird? I don't know what it is. Love it. Okay, and then the last book I'm going to talk about is one that I think I returned to the library. Yes, it is Greetings from Witness Protection. So I think I just talked about this in my last reading wrap-up, really recently anyway. It is a middle grade book about a girl who is 13-ish. She's been in foster care for a number of years, and the people in charge of witness protection, I'm blanking on the names, they decide that they're going to start this new program where they take kids out of foster care and put them into families who are in witness protection to like throw things off a bit for people searching for them. So like if you, this main character, she ends up going to this family that has parents plus one boy. So she's another daughter to throw things off because people are looking for parents with a boy, but now there's parents with two kids. And our main character, so she starts with the name Nikki. She ends up changing it to Charlotte because witness protection and all that. So sometimes I call her one, sometimes I call her the other. It is hilarious. As a teenager, I would have loved this book because this is what I would like to see happen. I could just would have pictured myself in this role. There is unfortunately a decent amount of the Lord's name in vain being used, and that bothers me a lot. But the book was still amazing. My daughter read it and right after me. I warned her about that part, and she said it's probably the best book she's ever read. Like 5 stars, she loved it, she flew through it. Yeah, and then there's just twists and turns that happen. She has major struggles, personal struggles, this girl, our main character, and she's not perfect, and there's just so many things I loved about it. Definitely recommend it if you like middle grade at all. That's all thanks to Anne. She's the one that originally read it, and I know a bunch of people started reading it after her recommendations. So that's 20 books in way too much time. Sorry it's so long, but I've read a lot of really good books in this last trimester, and I'm already excited to share my like wrap up for the end of the year. So let me know some of your favorite books from the last 4-ish months. I would love to hear them. Thanks for sticking around, guys.